Okay, good night of Shabbos. We're up to today's daf is daf Yud Tes, and we're up to Yud Ches Amid Beis. Yud Ches Amid Beis. So the Mishnah had said it gone through the various various protocols that were done with the carbon mincha. One of them was Yitzika. The Mishnah said if you didn't do Yitzika, it's kasha. We had a Mishnah from a Brisa from Rabbi saying that the Mishnah is not according to Rabbi Yishmael, because Rabbi Yishmael said that's one of the manas kuna. We try to give a teretz that what one was discussing where you did kamitza, that from kamitza ve'elech is the kahanim. Since Yitzika took place before kamitza, therefore that could be kosher bizarre. On the other hand, if it's the Minchas Kohen or Minchas Nesachim, according to the second Lashon, which there is no Kemitza, that would be Dafka Yitzika Al Yidei the Kohen. Rava disputed both the Shainis, and he said, where do you learn out that you have to do? Where do you learn out the Yitzika from in the first place? You learn out from Minchas Kahanim. So you learn it from Minchas Kahanim. So just like Minchas Kahanim, actually you learn Minchas Kahanim, you learn from Minchas Yisrael. So just like Minchas Yisrael was kosher bizarre, so to Minchas Kahanim Yitzika should be kosher bizarre. The Gemara goes ahead and concludes with that kasha that your teretz is nishkain teretz and enochinami. Our Mishnah is not according to Rabbi Yishmael. Good. Now, so Rabbi Yishmael shows that Yitzika is what is al yedei dafka koyin and the bnei and the Chachamim hold even al yedei zar. This staff, guys, is going to be full of plenty of psukim, plenty of psukim. Do you have the chart from last time? A list of all the psukim. So if you don't, here it is. It says, "V'nefesh kisakev kol mincha Hashem, solus yiyeh karbano, v'yotzak ala shemen, v'nasan ala levona." So then it says, "Ve'vi bei Aaron hakahanim v'kamatz misham." So the Chacham I'm going to learn, when does first Bnei Aaron come on the scene? They come on the scene first v'kamatz. But in the pasuk before where it says v'yotzak, it doesn't say anything about a kohen. It doesn't say anything about a kohen. So Memela, the Chachamim say from Kamitzen onwards, it's the mitzvah of Yisrael, but not what? Not beforehand. So I'm going to keep this on the screen as we're going to see. Says the Gemara. My time of the Rabbanan, 3 lines up, Yud Ches Amid Beis, Amakra, v'yitzek ala Hashemen, v'nasan ala Levayna, v'evia b'nei Aaron. And then in Pasuk Beis, it says you bring in the b'nei Aaron, a kohen. Now, then v'kamatz. So if you look at the Pasuk, guys, Geshmak. From b'nei Aaron, Kmitza ve'elech is al yedei mitzvah kahuna. Limeid al yitzika b'lila shekasher bizar. It's a mitzvah b'lila kashir. It's kasher bizar. Reb Shimon, it says b'nei Aaron hakahanim. Reb Shimon, it says b'nei Aaron hakahanim, and he drashes the fun of and mikra nidras lefanav ula achrav. The pasuk we're going to darshan b'nei Aaron going before and afterwards. So guys, in pasuk Aleph it says v'yatzak. In pasuk Beis it says v'kamatz. Smack in the middle it says b'nei Aaron. Reb Shimon says not only you darshan this way, going in this direction, la'achrav, but go back lefanav. So therefore you're going to darshan b'nei Aaron on the Yitzika as well, and therefore you dafka need b'nei Aaron kohen for Yitzika and not a Yisrael. That's the limit according to Reb Shimon. So the Chachamim learn it just la'achrav, and he goes back lefanav. Fred the Gemara on this. V'savar Reb Shimon mikra nidrish lefanav la'achrav. How can you say that's the reason Reb Shimon? I'm going to show you that he does not darshan that way. For Tanya, it says, "V'lokach hakoyin." This is speaking about the chatas. "V'lokach hakoyin midam hachatas be'etzba'o," and the koyin will take from the dam of the chatas with his etzba. Here you go. Here you have it in pasuk kafei. "V'lokach hakoyin midam hachatas be'etzba'o v'nasan al kanus mizbeach ha'olah be'ezdama yishpoich." So what do we darshan? V'nasan al kanus mizbeach be'etzba'o v'lokach. That Kabbalah should only be what? Be Yamin. Kvolokach is the Lashon of Kabbalah. And it says what? V'lokach hakoyim midam chatasi betzbo. Anytime it says etzba, it means what? Right. Etzba kuhuna, remember kuhuna is etzba, etzba is kuhuna. So once it says etzba, it means right. So you see v'lokach hakoyim midam betzbo, it has to be what? It has to be with Kabbalah. Now, it says v'nosan al kanus mizbach ha'olah. it's mashma, the etzbo is going with his finger, he should put the blood on the mizbeach, right? Guys, it's mashma from the etzba is going on the vinasan. But Rabbi Melamed Shalai Tehei Nesina Ela Biyamin. Etzba means right. Nasan Kanas Mizbeach means right. And therefore Kabbalah also is right. So guys, if you're going to darshan Lefanav Achrav, let's darshan like this. V'lakach is Kabbalah. V'nasan is obviously this is like this Rika, Nesina. It says right. So if you're going to darshan Lefanei Lefanov, you should say just like this is right, this is right. Good? What happens if you say the etzba is only going on v'nasan and not on v'lakach? Then Kabbalah could even be with the left. Then Kabbalah could even, the only way you know Kabbalah is to the right, if you're going to take etzba and put it back over here. According to the limud that we had in Reb Shimon earlier, so Reb Shimon should say that Kabbalah has to be with the right hand, because we're going to take etzba, just like we put Bnei Aaron back, so too we're going to go ahead and put etzba back, right? Says the Gemara, Amar Shimon, v'chinema yad b'Kabbalah. Does it say yad, right hand by Kabbalah? Hoyav le'nema yad b'Kabbalah, kibul b'smain kasha. V'amar Abaya, why does he hold the left hand's kasha? B'mikrat nidrus lefanav v'la'achrav kamiflaki. He's arguing whether the pasuk goes before and after. Okay, so very geschmack. How did you tell me Reb Shimon said you need a kohen, that Yitzika is only the kohen? Because we're going to darshan Bnei Aaron back on Yitzika. We see from here that Rabbi Shimon does not go backwards. How do you know? Because he says, V'lakach Kabbalah could be with the left. If you went backwards, you'd say etzba, which means right. Going backwards should be on V'lakach, and he doesn't do that. So now we're back to the original question. How do you know Rabbi Shimon says that Yitzika is kasha dafka b'kayin? If you're not going to darshan lefanov, right? How do you know that Yitzika is ayidei the kayin? And for the Gemara, I'll tell you how you know. The next, it says, V'shachat es ben habakar lefnei Hashem v'hikrivu b'nei Aaron hakahanim es the hadam. Okay, let's see inside. Ela hainu time Shimon ve'eviu. It says the lashon of ve'evia. Excuse me, pasuk beis, guys. Ve'eviu el b'nei Aaron hakahanim. So guys, watch. Pasuk aleph. V'nefesh kisikar of kavi minchal Hashem soiles yeh kabana v'yotzik Hashemin. Does the same thing about a kohen? Nothing. Just says Yitzika. Now, if I have a vav over here, and this vav will be moisif back to the upper right, so it's not the going lefanov. It's going with the vav. The vav is mechaber the vav is mechaber this bnei Aaron to this Yitzika, and that's how Yitzika is al yedei the kohen, and not al yedei what? Not al yedei this zar. Guys, good? So it's not a drasha of Lefanov, it's a drasha of the Vav being Maisif, like connecting it together. Good. It says back inside, Elahaytam of Shimon, Ve'evi Vav Maisiv Alinyan Rishain, Fed Gemar, Ve'savra of Shimon, Vav Maisiv Alinyan Rishain, Elamiyata Dechsev. It says, V'shachad has been abakal of Hashem, Ve'hikrivu b'nei Aaron Kahanim. So guys, now watch. V'shachat, Shchit is kosher bizarre, yes or no? One thing we know, Shchita is kosher bizarre. It says Vikrivu b'nei Aaron Kahanim. So if the vav is a connection, let the vav Vikrivu connect b'nei Aaron back to Shchita and say Shchita is only al yedei a kohen. If just like the vav and ve'evi is connecting back, the vav and Vikrivu should connect back. Says the Gemara, V'shachas ben abakar v'yim b'nei Aaron Kahanim es adam v'zoku es adam me'kabbalah ve'elech mitzvah kahuna. Only Vikrivu, which is Kabbalah, is mitzvah. Malamed al Shchita sheksher b'zar. That Shchita is kosher b'zar. Ilu Rav Shimon, Vav Moisiv Alinyan Rishain, let the Vav Vikrivu go ahead and be Moisiv, V'shchita hachanami bizar te psula, it should be puzzle. It says, Moshaini Hasam, the Amakra, because the pasuk says, V'samach v'shachat. It says V'samach, and then it says V'shachat. Ma smicha bizarim, just like smicha is what is bizarim, just like smicha is what is with azar. The smicha does not have to be done all day. The kan smicha is kosher. Has to not, but the zar af shchita bizar. Imas smicha bebailam smicha is with the baal, with the owner. Af shchita bebailam. Maybe if you're saying that you're comparing the samach v'shachat, you go again and comparing them together, right? You're going and comparing them together. So let's say that shchita also has only the bow, right? Hahuloi matzasami, because kavachaymer. Umazrika de ika kapara loy boy vailim shchita de lavika kapara loy kol shekain. Good. So in other words, srika is what is you don't need the owner. So certainly shchita you don't need the owner. Okay. Says the Gemara, ain't done in efsha mishi efsha. The chitema, if you're going to say you can't learn out something where it's possible, shchita mishi efsha. Everyone's made that the a zar or the owner cannot go ahead and do this rika. Only a kohen can do this rika. So how can I learn out shchita, something that's efsha al yedei the baal, from something that's e efsha? Again, if you're telling me v'samach is that shachat is teaching me that what that shchita is chashav bizar, let's take it one more step. Mani bizar, it should be the owner because the owner is the one who does smicha on the animal. So if the owner is the one who does smicha on the animal, you should also be chayiv. You should not chayiv. You should have him do the shchita. Says why you can't say that. Why? Because the rika is not al yedei the owner, but shchita is. Says it could be. Says why? Srika is al yedei the owner because it's not possible. So how can you learn out shchita which is possible al yedei the owner from srika which is not possible? Says Gemara Goli Rachmana b'Yom Kippur. The Torah is Megal b'Yom Kippur that shchita doesn't have to be by the owner because it says v'shachad es parachatas asher loi. It says by the kohen gadol, and he should shech the parachatas that is to him. Now, why does it have to say over there the shchita is b'bailim by the kohen gadol? Over there shchita is b'bailim. Mechlal, when the Torah had to go out of its way to say dafka by Yom Kippur that the shchita is done al yedei the kohen gadol, the owner. Mechlal the shchita ma'alma loy bein in bailim. It must be shchita all over. You do not need the owner. It must be shchita all over. You don't need the owner. Okay, comes out that enochinami at the end of the day, the vav is going to be moisif al inyan rishon. The vav just the Vevia is going to connect that the Yitzika in this pasuk is dafka al yedei what? Dafka al yedei the kohen. You have a kasha, if that's the case, then v'krivu that shchita should be also done al yedei dafka what? The kohen, right? Should be dafka, let's connect that b'shocha is dafka al yedei kohen. We said v'samach yodei al reish oila, they have smicha. So just like smicha is kasha bizar, so to shchita is kasha bizar. Kasha maybe has to be the baal. On that we have the limit for Yom Kippur that it doesn't have to be the Baal. A limit for Yom Kippur that why it doesn't have to be the Baal because Dafka by Yom Kippur was a hakpah that shchita al yedei arin mashkein all over not. Okay, so now the Gemara digresses and it's going to learn different sources in different places based upon whether it's ma'akiv or not, based upon various lashonos. It's a very nice Gemara, especially the psukim are very, very helpful. I think I'm just going to keep the chart open, fellas. I think it's just easier instead of me going back and forth. I think it'll be okay. Okay, now. Okay. Amarav, kol makom shenemar Torah v'chuka. Anytime the Torah uses the lashon of Torah v'chuka, notice, guys, pasuk beis. So it's chukas ha-Torah. So you have the lashon of chuka and the lashon of Torah. Anytime it says lashon of Torah v'chuka, eina elo la'akev. It's to tell me that it's ma'akev, that this is necessary, and if you don't do it, you aren't yotze the mitzvah. Kasal kedaitach tarti boy. In the Havamina, you need both. You need the lashon of chuka and the lashon of Torah. Kidduch siv, zois chukas ha-Torah. This is by para aduma, fellas. This is by para aduma. You will need both. The siman is nun tov tzadik yud kuf mem lamed. The nun stands for nazir. V'hari nazir, the like siva bei ela Torah. By nazir, guys, it says only the lashon of Torah. Guys, pasuk of aleph. Zois Torah and nazir. It doesn't say chuka, correct? Zois Torah and nazir. Asher yida b'karbana. It does not say what the lashon of Torah. It just says the lashon of chuka. It just says the lashon of Torah. V'amarav tenufa b'nazir ma'akfa. Now when they go ahead and they take the wafers and the shlomim and they go ahead and wave it together, right? It's ma'akiv. Why it doesn't say both. It's like chukas ha-Torah. Shani hasam kim nichsiv kenyi asa. Because what does the pasuk say? Look at the pasuk. Chaf aleph. So it's Torah senasa shayida karban al Hashem al nizroi novada shetasig yoda kfi nidroi ashayida ken yaseh. The ken yaseh is like the lashon of what of chukah. Torah and ken yaseh, as Kenny would say, azay daf mitan. Right? Ken yaseh azay daf mitan. That's the way That's what you have to do. So therefore, that's equivalent to what to Torah. For the Gemara, come on, Hari Toida. Let's say next guy's carbon Toida. Your base. Yud Aleph. V'zois Torah as zevach hashlamim. It says the lashon of what of Torah. It does not say the lashon of chukah. And Ella. So therefore, what? Hari Toida like sibbe Ella Torah v'tanan. Abar shebe Toida ma'akvin. The four chalas, the chalos, the rekikin, the chametz, and the revucha. The ma'akiv. It doesn't say Torah and chukah. It just says Torah. And the Gemara, shiny Toida, the iskish l'nazir. And we already established Nazir, Ken Yaseh, that this is the way it has to be. So we have a hekish between Zevach to Nazir, that just like Nazir, it's Ma'akiv, so too by Zevach, the four types of breads are Ma'akiv. Yichsiv al Zevach Toida Shlomov. Here's the hekish. Shlomov is Lashon Rabim, guys. He's only bringing one Shlomim to Nazir. It says Shlomov, right? Al chalis lechem chometz Yaakov korbanei al zevach toida shlamov, v'amamar shlamov l'Rabbi shalmei nazir. So this is now you have a hekesh between guys. The toida, this pasuk's by toida. Shlamov is speaking about nazir. The mela, just like nazir, it's ma'akiv who are in the four chalis and chometz and so forth are ma'akiv by the toida. Guys, how are we doing? V'hari mitzoira dichsiv bei ela toira. Pasuk base, guys, look over here. We have it in there. Sois tiye Toiras hamitzaira. It doesn't say kahuna. It just says Torah. And nonetheless, arba, the four things. This is in the process of chutz l'machne. The eitz eres, the shnei talas, the ezoiv, and the tzipoirim. They're all ma'akiv. It only says Torah. It doesn't say kahuna. Says the Gemara. Machman says, "Shani hasam kim nechsiv zois tiye Toiras hamitzaira." Since it says Zayt has to be Kiman Dechsiv Be Chukadami. It's like it said Chukah. So right now we're holding right that where it says Torah, we thought you needed both. Right now, how many needed both? So you only said one, it's not good. So too over here, you only said one, so it shouldn't be Ma'akiv, and therefore we had a limit from all, then it's Ma'akiv. So until now, again, the Havamina is you need both. Then we've been given cases where it only says Torah and doesn't say Chukah. Now we're going to give a case where it says Chukah and it doesn't say Torah. Now we're going to give a case where it says the other way around, where it says Chukah and it doesn't say Torah. So let's go back to our chart. Okay, so Pasuk of test, guys. So this is obviously speaking about Yom Kippur. Why does it say? It says chukah, right? It says chukah. Says the Gemara. V'hari Yom Kippur delekse be'el chukah v'tnan shnei sir Yom Kippur ma'akim zezeh, the two serim with ma'akiv. So therefore, what you see that. Even though it doesn't say Torah's chukah, it only says chukah, it's ma'akiv. So the Gemara now leaves the havamina. It leaves the havamina of what of that you need both, and now you only say you need one. Ella says the Gemara, Ella oy Torah oy chukah, either one. So now we don't need all those terutzim guys, right? Those the previous terutzim, we don't need them anymore, right? Because it said either one would go ahead and do the job. Either one would go ahead and do the job. Varishar Kabbanis, the Chsibei Torah, all the Kabbanis, it's right. It says Pasuk Lamed Zayin. Here it is. It says it says over there Torah v'loy ma'akva, and it's not ma'akiv, right? Over there you can bring one carbon out the other one. It's not ma'akiv. It says Torah boy chukah v'chukah boy Torah. So now we're saying that Torah needs the word chukah, but the word chukah doesn't need the word Torah. So now you need all the terutzim that we said previously, right? Because it only said Torah. So you need those terutzim. How can you tell me that? It says both. It says hachi kamar. Afagav dechsiv Torah, even though it says Torah, ikisiv chukah in. If it says chukah, then yes, it is ma'akiv. V'iloi, and if it doesn't say chukah, then loi. Gemara, Bahari Mincha, Tichsiv Beichuka. So now, what's your rule of thumb? Your rule of thumb is that what? That if it says Torah and it says Chukah, it's ma'akiv, and if it just says Torah without Chukah, it's not ma'akiv. And v'loi hari mincha Tichsiv Beichuka. Now, according to your rule, Chukah should be ma'akiv, guys, right? Chukah alone. Where we're holding. Torah needs Chukah, but Chukah doesn't need Torah. So anytime it says Chukah, it should be enough. It should be enough. So anytime it says Chukah, it should be enough. Okay, so now, Vash state, what does it say over here? V'amara, V'hari mincha, tichsiv beichuka. Mincha it says, right? By mincha it says the lashon of chukah. Mincha it says what? The lashon of chukah. Okay, where does it say it by? It just says lashon of chukah. Okay, we'll see in a second. It says the lashon of chukah by. And v'amarav kol makam shehichsir hakosiv b'toiras mincha eina elo la'akev. So, according to this, okay, I think before we see the psukim, eye contact. If I say chukah, it's ma'akiv. It says chukah by mincha. Therefore, I should not need any other limud to teach me it's ma'akiv. The fact that it says Torah by mincha alone, it's ma'akiv. That's not true, however. The Gemara is going to show the reason it's ma'akiv by mincha is it says the lashon chak again. It's repeated. If you tell me chukah alone is ma'akiv, there's no need for this repetition. When you do have this repetition, it's mashma choik alone is not ma'akiv. Good? That choik alone is not ma'akiv. So Fred the Gemara Kasha. V'amarav, kol makam shehichsir hakosiv b'toiras mincha, ein el akiv. Hichsir in, dafka if it's repeated, then it's ma'akiv. Loi hichsir loi. But if it's not repeated, then it's not ma'akiv. So the word chukah alone is not going to do the job. So the Gemara answers, chukah alone does do the job. However, look where the choik, it's repeated, guys. Kol zacha b'bnei Aaron, pasuk Yud Aleph. Okay? So again, for Zoystaris Lo'ila Lamincha, it says Lord Torah. So now, Yud Aleph. Kol zacha b'nei Aaron yachlena chak aylam. So the chak, the repetition, is going on yachlena, on eating it. Says the Gemara, Shiny Hasam, the reason why over there is the chik siva chuka, achila siva, right? The reason why it says kol zacha b'nei Aaron yachlena, so it's not ma'akev because it's not doubled down. What's the hezbollah? Really, the lashon over here is not, the chak over here is going on achila. So the only thing that I would think is ma'akiv is achila, but it's not. The achila is not ma'akiv over here. No one says that the achila of the carbon, the only achila that's ma'akiv by a carbon is the carbon Pesach, guys. But by other karbanis, it's not. So this over here, chukah alone would be ma'akiv. But it's different over here because it says chukah on achila. And since it says chukah on achila, right, I would say that what? It's not written, the repetition is not written la'akev. Rashi. Says Rashi. Where is it repeated? Mincha ksiv chukah, kol zocha b'nei Aaron yochel chak olam. And the pasuk goes and repeats it, b'sabes Aaron, mashe kavar omer b'vayikra, it's repeated in Sav. So therefore, why is it repeated? It's la'akev. So Fred the Gemara Kasha, it says chukah, what's the need to repeat it? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Because the achila, that chak that's repeated is going on achila. Hilkach lavli kuva asa. Therefore, it's not coming to be ma'akiv. Masha'en kain any other place it is. Masha'en kain any other place it is. When you say chukah, guys, when you say chukah, okay, okay, here's pshat. Here's pshat. Usually, chukah alone does the job, but the chuk that's said by mincha is said regarding eating, and everyone knows regarding eating. Everyone knows regarding eating that it's not ma'akiv. So mamela, the chayk there can't do the job. Therefore, it's necessary to repeat throughout the process of mincha to ma'akiv. Generally, chukah alone does the job. Read the Gemara, so why was it necessary to repeat by mincha to go ahead and do the job if you had the word chukah? Answers the Gemara, the chukah that it says over there is not enough to do the job because it's only said on achila, and we know achila is not ma'akiv. So mamela, the chukah by mincha is a different chukah. It's a weaker chukah. It's one that can't do the job. To do the job, you need a repetition of chukah. One more time. The word, Fred is asking a kasha. If chukah does the job, why is it necessary to repeat not chukah, not to repeat the word chukah? Why is it necessary to repeat everything in the parsha? In other words, whatever repeats in the parsha is ma'akiv, whatever not. Says the Gemara, usually chukah could do the job. Why was it necessary to repeat by mincha to be ma'akiv? Because the chukah by mincha can't do the job. Why can't the chukah by mincha do the job? Because it's only going on achila, and we know achila is not ma'akiv. Memela, you need to repeat it to go ahead and do the job to say it's ma'akiv. That's what the Gemara is saying right now. Okay? So let's see it one more time inside. I'm sorry, I wasn't so clear. I thought I was clear, but at this, I guess I wasn't. Says the Gemara, very geschmack. V'hari mincha. It says by mincha, tichsiv bechukah, v'amar Rav, kol makam shehichse hakase b'toiras mincha, ein elo la'akiv. Hichse in, when something's repeated, yes, loy hichse loy. Why can't chukah alone do the job? And for the Gemara, shiny hasam, the chiksiv chukah achila ksiva. It's said on achila, and therefore it's a shvacha chukah, because achila is not ma'akiv, and therefore I wouldn't know unless therefore it's necessary to repeat. Fedim vaylechem aponim, the chiksiv chukah achila ksiva. Vaylechem aponim, it says the lashon of the pasuk on achila. What does it say? For Hoysel Aaron Labana Vachlu b'Machem Kodesh Ki Kodesh Kula Lo Mishi Hashem Chak Olam. It's going on the lechem upon him. So it says Chak, and it's going on the Achila, guys, right? It's going on the Achila. Now, if this Chak is alone to me ma'akiv on the Achila, then I got back to the original question. Why was it necessary to repeat everything in the parsha of Mincha to ma'akiv? The Chayk is ma'akiv. So let's see it inside. For lechem apfred Gemara. Vaylechem ponim the kiksiv chuka achil ksiva v'tnan shtei sidarim the two rows of loaves ma'akven zezeh shnei bazichin the two pots of frankincense ma'akven zezeh hasidarim v'mazichin ma'akven zezeh. So you got a problem. What's our problem? It says chuka by mincha, yet the only reason by mincha things are ma'akiv is because they're repeated, but not because it says chak. You tell me chukah alone does the job, and you can't tell me it's a shvacha chukah because it says on achila, because it says by achila lechem upon him, and the chayk of achila by lechem upon him does the job. So why doesn't the chayk by mincha do the job? Guys, you with me? Guys, you with me? Says the Gemara, very good. Ela kol hecha dechsiva achila akula milsa ksiva. Ein achinami. When it says on achila, it's going on everything. So therefore, why was it necessary? So guys, it says mincha, it says chak on mincha. So why the need to repeat to create it? Why is mincha different? And the answer is this pasuk. It says v'hikter hakayin es askarasa mi gersha umi shamna al kol levanasa isha Hashem. Right. Shiny hasa by mincha. Damakra mi gersha umi shamna geresh v'shemen ma'akiv ve'ein dava acha ma'akiv. In other words, it says it's geresh, it's shemen. So it's stressing over there. It's stressing over there. It could have said migeresh umishemen. Why does it say migersha umishamna? So it has to be. We learned earlier. It can't be chaser, guys. It has to be totally. It has to be mishamna gersha. Nothing could be missing. Okay. So v'dafka gerish v'shamna. That's when it's ma'akiv, and nothing else would be ma'akiv unless it was repeated. Okay, so we have the word chukah. It's going on achila. Now it says v'hiktar akoines es karasa migersha umishamna akol levanasa. So I would have said the following: the hakpada is that only the geresh v'shemen is ma'akiv, and nothing else. Therefore, it was necessary to repeat. In other words, I have chukah. Chukah usually does the job alone. The kasha is why by mincha it wasn't necessary to repeat everything else to ma'akiv I have chukah, is because I would say the chukah is going on megershum mishamna. Over there it's ma'akiv, but anything else not. Therefore, it was necessary to repeat. But einachinami, usually chukah alone does the job. That's the limit. So we ended up again the kasha for mincha. Rav's kasha by mincha. The only reason it's ma'akiv because it's repeated. Why it says chukah, because we have at the end of the day we have that since the Torah was makbid on gerish v'shemen dafka there it's ma'akiv. I would say all the rest of the parsha is not, despite the fact that it says chukah comes along the repetition to tell me it's ma'akiv. But einachinami chukah alone is ma'akiv. Kufa Amarav kol makom shehichzel lecha akoseh b'Torah. When it's repeated, in other words, without the repetition, it would not be ma'akiv. The reason it's ma'akiv is because it's repeated. Ushmul Amar gerish v'shebim ma'akvin ve'ein dava acha ma'akvin. Afilu what the Torah repeats it, it's not ma'akiv. So in other words, he argues in the whole thing the Parsha Mincha. According to Rav, Gerish v'shemen, yes, and any other repetition. According to Shmuel, only Gerish v'shemen and not any other repetition. So any repetition is not going to be ma'akiv by mincha. Fred Gemaru l'Shmuel afagav detani bekro le'ma'akva. Now, guys, we've been learning for quite a while. We know usually when something's repeated, it's the ma'akiv. When something is repeated, it's the ma'akiv. So the question is, so Shmuel's arguing on that concept. By minchas, if it's repeated, it's not ma'akiv. I l'chayr all over, it is ma'akiv. Well, Shmuel afgav the tani bekrole ma'akvale. In other words, that doesn't make any sense. Ella must be kol hecha the tani bekro vade ma'akiv. The Torah repeats it, vade it's ma'akiv. V'hacha over here by mincha b'molei kumtzoi b'kumtzoi kamiflagi. In one parsha it says molei kumtzoi. In the second parsha, in Parsha Tzav, it says b'kumtzoi. Okay, so why did you change? Why did it go from Mali Kamsoi to Kamsoi? Why did you change? The Tanya, Mali Kamsoi, Bekumsoi Shalayase. What does that mean? Bekumsoi Shalayase Mida Lekaimsoi. Mali Kamsoi Bekumsoi Shalayase Mida Lekaimitz. Everyone's hand is a different size. So I would think the following, that maybe the Kayin, you measure his hand, put that flour in the hand, and put that on the Mizbeach. Comes along, it says, Molei kumtzai, b'kumtzai, that what? You should not go ahead and make a kli. That's Pashib Shat. There's a Rashbam, there's a Tosef Shishanim in Yuma, Daf Mem Zayin, Amid Aleph. Tosef Shishanim says there's no Havamina, fellas, that he would have to do with his hands. Right? There's no Havamina that he would have to do in his hands. But that's not, it's possible that he has to do with his hands. The Chiddush is, first measure it out and have him do it. No, it's not pshat. He pre-measure, right? He pre-measure. Pashim shot. I learned that he met. Let's say his hands holds 10 ounces. So you make a clear 10 ounces and do that. That's not. There's no havamina to that. The havamina is that he do the kaimitz and then put it in a kli, and then he would do a kaimitz with his hand and then put it right in the kli, and then do kmitza from the kli. In other words, you would go ahead. It's 10 ounces. You would go ahead, and then he would go from the kli, not directly from the big thing. So again, it's machloikis. What does it mean? That he wouldn't do it with his hand at all, or he do it with his hand, but he would do it with his hand in a pre-measured kli. Okay. Anyway, Rav Sava Hanami Tane Beikra. This also is repeated that you couldn't write. The Chsiv, the pasuk says. The Chsiv, the pasuk says. Vayakrev es hamincha. It says by the miluyim, guys, by the miluyim. Vayakrev es hamincha vayimale kapay mimenu. So it's mashma when it says kapay, it means his hands. So it goes ahead, and you go ahead and you have a pasuk that tells you that it's pre-measured. You have a pasuk that tells you what? That it's pre-measured. So question, is that ma'akiv or not? According to Rabbi, it's repeated. It's repeated, moli kamtsoi, and you know already from kapoi, so it's repeated. Therefore, you would not be able to use it. If you use a kli, it'll be ma'akiv. And Shmuel, who says that it's not repeated, and therefore b'di'evit it would be okay. It says because it says mishum doiris misha lo yalfinon. You're not going to learn out generations from the miluyim that took place one time. So again, what's the let me ferocious. The machloikis is when it says moli kamsoi b'kaimsoi, and that's a double lashon, right? That one place it says one thing, one place it says another thing. Okay, so we have machloikis according to Rav and according to Shmuel. Should you make a kli for midas kaimitz? If you do it, whether you would be yaitz or not. According to Rav, no. According to Shmuel, yes. Why? According to Rav, no, because it's repeated. Why? According to Shmuel, no, because it's not repeated. Where do you see the repetition by Rav? You say it from Parshas L'Doiros, and you see it from L'Shah, from the Miluyim. Shmuel says whatever you learn from the Miluyim is not a repetition, and therefore you don't have it's not Mishana to Ma'akiv if you go ahead and use a Kli. Yes, Heshi.
When you say pre-measured, what does it mean? They know the size of his hand and they put it in a bowl in the Kli Sharetz, and then he does it.
That's the machlokes.
But how's it shayach if it's pre-measured that he could get to do the kaimitz from everything? How does he scoop it all up? It's going to lose some of it. In the kli, it's not possible to scoop the entire everything in there. I mean, think about it logically; it just doesn't work. You can't scoop up everything.
Okay, I always answer you by these. You ask these practical questions very often, and I always tell you the same thing, that obviously you could do it. In your mind, you can't do it. Tiny asked the other day, how can it have oil in a kli shares, in a kli chayil and kli shares, the oil is going to stick to the sides of the kli? Again, these are questions of practicality. They're not questions in Lomdus with Gemara. The question is, I pre-measured my hand, right? So now, so there's two pshatim. Either you don't do it at all with your hand. This will answer your question. According to you, very good. Don't do it at all with your hand. Pre-measure the kli, scoop it out, and then you're going to put it. So what are you going to say? It's going to stick to the kli, and you're not going to get the whole kaimitz on. I'll ask you a question. When you do kamitza heshi and you burn it you put in your hands in the kli, isn't something going to be stuck to your hand?
Yeah, possibly, but not necessarily.
I then you chaser.
Yeah, in a chinami.
So how do you ever do kamitza?
Okay, so that's the. More so in the cliches. That's what I
No. I understand. I understand. I'm trying to explain to you. Your question is physically, how's that possible? So I'm asking you, if that's your question, why don't you ask on any kamitza? You put in your hand this oil. Let's say it's oily. It's oily silas, and it's going to be in your hand. So obviously it's somehow going to take it off your hand. And so too, the same thing the kli.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
Okay, getting back to the physical mitzias of the question in the Gemara, guys. Good. Let's go through it again. Mole kamtsai, repetition. Is a repetition or not? If it is a repetition, then you won't be able to use the kli b'di'eved. If it's not a repetition, you would. According to Rav, it's a repetition, but the repetition is not from the miluyim. According to Shmuel, since the repetition miluyim is not a repetition, therefore lechatchila you should not use a kli, but b'di'eved, if you did, you would be yaitza. Fred the Gemara lo yolav Shmuel. L'doris Mishah, the Shmuel not learn out Midoris L'Shah. So you might remember this Gemara. You might remember this guys. We had this earlier in Zvachim, and for some reason it sticks in people's minds. Shmuel Doris Mishah Vatanan. You have a Mishnah, Kli Halach, a Kli that is made for liquid measurements. Mekachin es Halach. They have the Kli Sharis Kim Mekadesh, something that's liquid. Umidas Yavesh, something that's dry. Kli Shavesh Mekadesh as a Yavesh. The ain Kli Alach Mekachin as a Yavesh, let me this Yavesh Mekachin as Alach. However, V'amar Shmuel, Lo Shanu Elamidos, the measuring cups, Aval Mizrakos, the Mizrakos that are Mekabel the Dam, the Mekabel the Dam, Mekachin, they wouldn't Mekadesh Yavesh, Dichsiv. Now you're not getting the full pasuk over here. Here's the full pasuk. The Karbonoi Karas Kesef Achas. Shloishim umeya mishkala, mizrak echad kesef, a silver mizrak, which is what a kli used for blood, right? Shivim shekel b'shekel hakodesh, shneim mileim soiles. So you see, the mizrak, guys, is full of soiles. So we have a gezeres hakosiv that a kli that's made for blood could contain soiles. Now, is this l'dairos? Yeah. No, it's not l'dairos. This is only l'fisha. This is the miluyim. This is the minchas nesiyim, right? That was only at that time. Yet you're learning a halacha for the future. You're learning that a mizrak, a kli for dam, could go ahead and yavesh. According to Shmuel, if you don't learn what l'dairos l'shah, here's an example. You are learning l'dairos l'shah. The fact that the kli shari, the kli that's full of blood, can contain the. Again, we said the last time also, the ikka word is missing over here, guys. The ikka word is mizrak, and now shneim leim soilis, right? That the mizrak is full of soilis. And for the Gemara, shani hasam, the tani beikra, tresin zimnin. Okay, now, we know something repeated once is once, maybe yes, maybe no. If something's repeated 12 times, it's going to teach me that what? Afilu from shal l'dairis. But einachinami. Usually, you do not learn out shal l'dairis. In this case, you would. Only Rav Kahana Ravasi l'Rav. So what did you say, Rav? You said that anything that's repeated is ma'akiv, right? Anything that's repeated is ma'akiv. V'harei agosha, the tana bakra, it's repeated in the Torah, v'loi ma'akva, and it's not ma'akiv. But according to you, Rav, if it's repeated, it is by mincha. Man tane bei, dichsiv, zois Torahs ha-mincha, hakrei v'yisah b'nei Aaron, l'fnei Hashem. Okay, so let's see that we have a pasuk. All the pasukim, Baruch Hashem. I think we're holding by the end. The Zois Torahs HaMincha, Hakar V'Sah B'nei Aaron L'fnei Hashem El Pnei HaMizbeach. So this is the Hagasha, and this is a repetition. This the pasuk says earlier Hagasha, and this is a repetition. And we saw, guys, in the Mishnah, that Hagasha is not ma'akev, correct? Guys, Hagasha is not ma'akev. We saw that. So according to Rav, since it's repeated, it should be ma'akev, correct? That's Hakasha. It should be ma'akev. And for the Gemara, it's different over there, right? Hahulik fayala makam huda. That's not to tell me it's ma'akev. It's to be koveya the southwest. It's going to be a southwest. Okay, guys, you see your Gemara, you have a picture in your Gemara? Rashi gives us a picture. Look at that picture. It says two things, guys. It says Lifnei Hashem. And it says Al Pnei HaMizbeach. It says Lifnei Hashem Al Pnei HaMizbeach. Now, Lifnei Hashem would be on the west side, right? The west side. The way we're looking at it, you were going from southwest to north-south. We're going east to west. Okay, so looking at east to west. So on the Heichel is considered Pesach El Moed L'fnei Hashem. You see the word, the picture of the Heichel? That's considered L'fnei Hashem. So according to that, if you're going to do L'fnei Hashem, you're going to have to put the mincha, you're going to touch the mincha up on the west side, yes? It says Pnei HaMizbeach. What's the Pnei HaMizbeach? It's the south. Guys, remember, Yerech HaMizbeach is the north. So if Yerech is the north, the feet is in the north, it must be the heads in the south, yeah? So if it says south, you'd have to put it on the south side. You have to put it on the south side. Good? So now, by telling me both, what are you telling me? You put it on the southwest. So that's what I need it for. So it's not repeated to be ma'akev. Einachinami, it's not ma'akev, because it's not repeated. What's it repeated for? To teach me location. Okay, so that's the teretz to the kasha on Rav. Now the Gemara just digresses and is going to give a different shita. Fellas, if the Mizbeach is not in the south, as pictured over here, if you might remember in Zvachim, we had three machloikas in the location of the Mizbeach. One was the south, one was in the middle, and one was in the north. If it's in the north, then if it's in the north, it's all the way in the north, then the south side would be both. Correct? Guys, take the Mizbeach, push it all the way into the north. Then the south side would be Pnei Mizbeach and also be L'fnei Hashem. Right? If you're taking the Mizbeach and pushing it forward, yes? Okay, very good. Let's see the Gemara inside. Man Tanabei Dichsiv, where do you repeat it? So you see it's repeated, how come it's not Ma'akev? Because it's continuing the place of the Hagasha, the Tanya, L'fnei Hashem, Yachal B'Mayir. If it's L'fnei Hashem, I would think it's to the west side. Tamadlaim El Pnei Mizbeach. El Pnei Mizbeach, Yachal B'Darim, only the south side. Tamadlaim L'fnei Hashem. HaKetzad, how do you make both? Megisha B'Keren Droimis, Maravis, you bring it to the southwest, Keneged Chudash El Keren V'Dayoi. V'Dayoi, that would be enough. What does V'Dayoi mean? It's funny lashon. Look at Taisus, guys. Keneged Chudash El Keren V'Dayoi. Perek Beis the Soita Dayak Mal V'Dayoi. What does it mean Dayoi? Umeshani Sal Kedaitach Tiboi Hagasha B'Mincha Gufa. Pirish Shiasirenu Min HaKli V'Yagash HaSoilas Atzma L'Mizbeach. I might think Hesha, you take it out of the Kli, put it in your hands, and take the soilus and put it on the Mizbeach itself. Kamash Malon Dayoi. Guys, what does Dayoi mean? Look, it's Dayoi to take the Kli and touch it. It's not necessary to take it out of the Kli. That's the Dayoi. It's enough. It's enough to put it next to the Mizbeach in the Kli, the Dayoi, that you shouldn't have to take it out of the soilus out and put it on the Mizbeach. Good, that's the Lashon, the pitchikal Lashon of the Dayoi. Continues the Gemara. For Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yachol Yagishenu L'Mayrav Shel Keren, L'Droimer Shel Keren. I might think what Yachol Yagishenu L'Mayrav Shel Keren or L'Droimer Shel Keren. I might think you bring it to either the west or the south. Amit Kol Makom Shata Moitzi Shtei Mikrois. You find two psukim. At the Mekayim, Echem Mekayim Atzmoi Mekayim Chaverei. One Mekayim both. Ve'echem Mekayim Atzmoi Vatas Chaverei. Umenichem Eshem Mekayim Atzmoi Vatas Chaverei. V'Toyshin Eshem Mekayim Atzmoi Mekayim Chaverei. Okay, in other words, very easy, guys. If you have two psukim that are so to themselves, if you can go ahead and bring one that answers up the other one, then you bring that one rather than one that's so to the other one. So over here, apparently, it says, I might think south, I might think west. So if you put it on west, it's not south. If you put it on south, it's not west. What happens if I can go ahead and push the Mizbeach all the way to the north? Then by putting in the south, I'd be Mekayim both. It would be L'fnei Hashem and Pnei Mizbeach. So, Sheshatu Omer L'fnei Hashem, B'Mayriv. If you say L'fnei Hashem, that means the west side. B'Talta El Pnei Mizbeach. You M'vatal the Pnei Mizbeach, which is the south side, B'Darim. Ukshatu Omer El Pnei Mizbeach, B'Darim. But however, if you put it on the south side, Kiyamtu L'fnei Hashem. You will be Mekayim L'fnei Hashem. Question: how can you Mekayim L'fnei Hashem? Ve'ich Kiyamta Amar Vashi Kesava Hai. Rabbi Eliezer of the opinion Tanakula Mizbeach B'Tzafim Kai. The Mizbeach was totally in the north. So when the Mizbeach was totally in the north, then the south side is the Pnei Hashem and it's Pnei Mizbeach. And I wish everyone a great Shabbat.